Hello and welcome to this video tutorial on how to install SQL Server. This is Jesse Sims with SQLSeek. Let's get started. First you'll need to run the setup exe, which would be located in the folder where your setup files are. Once you've ran this, you'll be shown the SQL Server Installation Center screen. From here you'll choose Installation and then New SQL Server Standalone Installation. From here you'll need to choose your product edition. There's a couple different editions of Evaluation, Enterprise, Standard, Express, and Developer. Today we're going to install Evaluation, which is basically a full-blown Enterprise edition, except it is limited to 180 days. I'm actually going to have another video that will go over the difference in the versions. You can check that out if you want to know more. But like I said, we're going to choose Evaluation, Accept. And then here it's going to basically run some checks to make sure that we can install SQL Server. Make sure we have the right version of .NET. Make sure we have a compatible version of Windows and correct service packs. It will also check their firewall, which in this case it's showing a warning because it just wants to make sure that the ports are set up correctly, because if I'm connecting from a remote server we might have issues since I do have a firewall. But in this case, I'm going to be connecting locally, so that's not an issue for me. So let's just choose Next. And when you're installing SQL Server, you're going to want to choose this first radio button here, SQL Server Feature Installation. And from here, we'll be able to actually choose what we want to install. And there's a lot of features here you can install. Luckily, we don't have to install them all. You can actually choose which ones you want to install. And in this case, I want to install the database engine, because we definitely need that, and then the management tools, which is basically SQL Server Management Studio, and I'll have a video tutorial on that as well. But this will install the instance on C. You could change it if you wanted. C is probably okay. This is not the data directories. Those will be different. You can set you'll be able to set those up later, but you probably do want those on a different drive than C. Here's where you'll choose whether you want to install a default instance or a named instance. The default is obviously default, which is, really the main difference is when you connect to them, you'll have to specify, if you're just doing a default, you'll just specify the server name. If you're doing a name, you have to specify the server name and the instance name. If you have more than one, you have to have a named instance. You can't have two default instances. And in this case, I'm just going to keep it default, keep it simple. Next. Here you'll be able to choose which service accounts are going to run the various services that make SQL Server work. The engine obviously is very important, and the agent, which is used to run jobs and do some automating within SQL Server, and both set those to automatic so they start when Windows starts. You can actually choose a domain account here if you wanted, or it will automatically create these accounts for you. And that's what I'm actually going to do. I'm just going to leave it as a default, and I'm not going to use the browser, so I'm going to leave it disabled. Collation is very important to make sure you set it at the beginning. You can change it at for the instance, but it's very painful, and I would not suggest it. You can override it to the database level, but it's probably a good idea to try to set it that's going to work for all your databases if you can. And usually the default's fine, but sometimes there are some cases where it is not. The next screen is going to be where you set how you can connect to SQL Server. You can either say I only want Windows accounts, or I want SQL Server and Windows accounts. In this case, I'm going to do mixed, which will allow both. And at that point, it will allow you to enter a service account password, which this is, or the service administrator password. And you do have to have somewhat of a secure password. I think you have to have like a capital letter and a number. But this will basically create an account that's going to have full rights, and then you want to add yourself too, so you can click Add User here. Then you'll go into the data directory, sorry, and you'll choose. Make sure that you do not. It's probably a good idea to make sure you don't put the data files and your log files on the same directory, and especially your backup files. Your backup files probably actually need to be on a different server completely, but sometimes that's not possible. But in this server, I only have 2 drives, so I'm just going to put the data files on D and the log files on E. And I'll also put my backup files on here just to separate them. And here we'll be able to go through and basically make sure that everything we're going to install is what we want to install. It's probably a good idea to review this before you click install. We want evaluation, we want the database engine and the management tools, and we have the correct data directories. And it shows if it's a default or named instance. And then from this point, all we do is click install. Once the install does complete, you can go in and verify that the install has worked. Kind of double check it. If you go under the installation center again in tools, you can open this installed SQL Server features discovery report. It will typically open in a web browser similar to this, where you can see which version of SQL Server is installed and what the instances names are. In this case, it's the default. And we can also see that Management Studio is installed. This can come in handy when you need to know what instances are installed on a box. This is how to install SQL Server. Thank you for watching.